Sorry about that. How's it going, everybody? I'm Eugene Hutton with Where the Wild Things Are. Trying out my live broadcast today, something new we're trying out. I had a fun story um, that I thought might be relatable, that I thought might be fun to tell. So here we are. We're gonna give it a shot. We all have different experiences in our lives, and we all judge things sometimes based on what the media says or what we think of the right media. Sometimes we have our own opinions based on what channel we tune into, and that's how we form our own opinions and sometimes our beliefs, sometimes our core beliefs. And this story is kind of an example of how that was just proven wrong to me recently. So recently, my wife and kids, they were gone, and I was out of town. I was somewhere getting hay. It was late in the evening. So I saw a Mexican restaurant. I stopped. I figured I'd have some dinner. I figured I'd have some dinner in the cantina because, I never actually get to eat in the cantina because I've always got kids, I've always got my wife. So I thought, I'll go spend some time in the adult section, like to finally see what's back there. So I went back there and I ordered my food. It was Mexican food. It was really good. I'll tell you the place, but I'm not gonna. Um, and again, this story has been a while, so I've waited a while to tell it because I didn't want anybody who was involved in it to feel put on blast or anything like that. So that's why I've waited. Anyway, so I'm back there. I'm having adult drinks, having a beer, nice cold one. It's been a long day loading hay. Having my dinner. I'm talking to a young kid next to me. He's got a logging business. He's a heavy diesel mechanic. He's telling me about his life and how he's trying to do something with it, and it was pretty cool. And then there was another gentleman next to me. He's what we would call a snowbird around my parts. He's a full-time RVer. He's retired, full-time retired all the time, and so he's telling me his story and how much he loves being a full-time RVer is what he says. You know, he's living that van life and he's loving it. He's telling me all about his adventures, about all up and down the West Coast and, up in the Northwest, everywhere he goes. He's just got some great stories. You can tell he's lived a pretty cool life and now he's got a good nest egg and he's just enjoying himself. And so it was really cool. It was really cool to hear that perspective. It always gives people hope that if you hold on, maybe you'll get what's coming to you, or what you deserve, I should say. Another gentleman sat down right next to me, between me and the snowbird, and we got to talking, and we had a little bit of a relationship, or not a relationship. We had a common history because we were both in the military. I forget exactly. I believe he was in the Air Force, and so we got to talking about it, and then it obviously got brought up that I was in the military, and so just a little background on myself. I was in the military. I was in the Army for 6 years. I was in Iraq for 14 months, and I was in Afghanistan for 11 months. Excuse me. And I was combat arms the whole time. I was a cavalry scout. It's like infantry, but smaller. And then I had some time in special forces before frostbite took me out of that community. I've jumped out of planes. I've shot stuff. I've blown stuff up, been blown up. I've got my own injuries and stuff like that. But I was heavy into it, man. I mean, I was a professional shooter and I loved it and I was very good at it. So that's a little short background on my military history as I segue into what I'm going to call the inciting incident of this story. Okay. Snowbird guy hears that I'm in the military and he literally stands up like he's got something to prove. And it was kind of sad. He looked me in the face and he said, what's it like to be a baby? He was accusing me of canceling the life subscriptions of babies and kids and innocent people in war zones that I had been into. And of course, this got me hot, because I was a professional shooter. What I normally call myself as a quiet professional. This guy got me hot. But, I have kids. I have a life to think about. I stood up. I was going to say what I had to say, but it was never going to go any further than that. I'm not stupid. I've got kids to think about. So I stood up and I told him that I was a professional shooter, or I was, in my time, and that I had no issues with sleeping because of any triggers that I pulled or anything that I did, because I and the people next to me, we're very conscious. We're not just stupid robots out there with guns doing what the president says. No, no, we are people with conscience and with logical thought and feelings and emotions and empathy and all that other stuff. And I have no issues with how I fought my wars. This gentleman had an issue with how he thought I fought my wars. And so I asked him if he had served, and he said he did, which I was actually kind of surprised. He said that he was in during Vietnam. And I said, well, then you should understand the concept of a war and what it really means on the ground. And he said that he spent the entirety of Vietnam in Germany. So that was his choice. Unfortunately, according to me and in my opinion, that guy had a perspective based on, or he had an opinion based on no perspective. He's never made a conscious decision on somebody's life in a war zone. And he told me that I was just a robot and an idiot because I was just fighting for what the administration or the government told me was freedom. And I told him that he was very wrong. I told him he was very wrong. He said, well, what did you fight for? And I said, at the end of the day, it was about the guy to my left and right, because you develop such a brotherhood and such a bond with those guys that you will die. You will die for the guy next to you, because that is your brother. And those are still my brothers. And in a way, that's the definition of freedom. That's the definition of the American dream. That's the definition of being able to defend what you believe in. I believed in him, and I believed in him, and they believed in me, and we were willing to die to prove it. And at the end of the day, when you're on the ground and the bullets are flying and zipping and the buzzing is happening, that's all that matters. That's all that matters, that you know that you have support. So I told him that was my definition of it, and I left it at that. I sat back down. The cantina got a little quiet. It got a little awkward, obviously, because it was such an off the wall comment that I couldn't believe he said it. I really couldn't. Well, to get to the crux of our story here, how the Aryan Brotherhood came to my defense. I sat back down, and this biker dude, big beard, baggy pants, the chain wallet, everything you'd think of a biker, and the AB guys, if you really know what I'm talking about. He comes up to me, he taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Hey, bro, I totally get it. That guy was wrong." And he said, "If I hadn't have messed up my life at such a young age, I would have done what you did, because I feel as strongly as you felt." And man, I was like, you know what? Thank you for the support. I really appreciate that. And then I went back to, I think I was eating pozole. I went back to my pozole and, having a sip of my beer, just trying to calm down. This same guy comes up later, and he taps me on the shoulder, says, "Hey, you want to go outside and have a cigarette?" I don't smoke, but I was hot, and I was ready to go outside. So I go outside, and we're talking, and I'm looking at him, just kind of picking it apart, doing a little bit of deducing of what I think of this person. And I can see the iron crosses everywhere. I can see the lightning bolts. I can see everything that says this guy, according to society, wouldn't be hanging out with me, if you know what I mean. And then he had a friend pull up on a motorcycle, no less, with the Kaiser style helmet and everything. I mean, he had iron crosses here. I mean, he was hanging on it. And so I just went for it, guys. I was like, you know what? I see what I see, so I'm going to ask them. These guys obviously have a little respect for me, so I'm going to approach this with respect. So, what would you do if you were me and you could get unfettered access to former or current, I don't know, members of the Aryan Brotherhood or the brand, or even at a very least, somebody who had spent an incredible amount of time in prison and had an impressive number of felonies? What would you talk about? Well, here's what I talked about. First of all, I asked these guys why they stood up for me. That was something that I really wanted to know. What is it that made you want to say something? Why did you stand up for me? Because as far as I know, your organization doesn't like people of my complexion. And he said that used to be true, and that things are different now. And he's a former member, which is good. So he's making some reforms in his life, and he's changing things. But he said at the end of the day, it was a parallel of being on a battleground. Whether for him it was a prison yard, and for me it was Afghanistan and Iraq. He understood the parallels of fighting for the guy next to you and fighting for something that you believe in. What he believed in maybe is not what everybody believes in. I didn't agree with everything these guys said over the night, but at the end of the night, it was a good experience, and I didn't feel threatened or anything like that. So I asked them, What did I ask him about? I of course I asked him about prison, because the one guy, the motorcycle guy, he said he had something like 125 felonies. I mean, incredible list of stuff for a bunch of burglaries, drug stuff, mildly maybe assaults and stuff like that, but nothing terribly violent or anything like that. The other guy, he had like a second degree murder charge or something like that. He had been down for like 18 years or something. I mean, he was like fresh out, like 10 months. Okay. All right. So I asked them, I wanted to know about prison hierarchy. I want to know how it worked. I said, "Hey, man, how do I know, that you're an OG, original gangster? How do I know that you're somebody to be respected if you go from one yard to another? If you transfer prisons, how is it? How is it that somebody like me or somebody that who doesn't know you would know not to mess with you? Tattoos aside, anybody can get tattoos." And he explained it to me as like how it's broken down with the numbers and stuff. The older your or the lower the number, then the older the inmate and so forth. I'm not going to get into it too much and stuff. And some of the other stuff he said he probably shouldn't have or whatever. But they have access to phones and stuff. They can look you up, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. Um, so in a way, it kind of related to military rank. Like that's how we kind of found a parallel there. Was that like no matter where you go in the military, what's on your chest or your lapels or your shoulders, wherever it is you're wearing your rank, the rest of us would respect it and understand it based on what it is. So we drew parallels with that. He told me some stories about his opinions on race and stuff like that, things he had done when he was younger. He tried to justify it in a way that he might have cloaked it in passion and thought that maybe we had the same passion, which we didn't. We didn't. It was some of it was uncomfortable, but I didn't judge him. I didn't call him out. I didn't say anything. I literally just told him, that was you and that was your past, and I don't agree with it, pretty much. And we left it at that. What else did we talk about? Of course, we talked about we talked about Hitler. I had to. These guys were giving me a free reign to just talk about whatever I wanted to, and they were being really cool, so I did it. I asked them what they thought about Hitler. They seemed to think he was he was a little bit more impressive than history would say he was. Um, they seem to maybe agree with his initial ideals a little bit more than society or than myself would definitely agree. I didn't agree with a lot of what they said. I told him that Hitler was a mediocre artist who didn't get approval from his father and was later drugged up by Theodore Morel towards the end of the war. And that was my opinion why he was so crazy. So obviously we didn't agree on that stuff, but it was cool to get the back and forth on it. It was a lot of fun on that. We talked about race. Obviously, race was a thing when they were younger. I guess it was a way that they explained it in a way that they could. They were part of something. They were part of a group or whatever it was. However misguided, however discouraging, however well, it's not a very good group. So that was when they were younger. They've made a lot of changes and stuff like that. They're making real efforts to turn their lives in a different direction, and I can totally respect that. And we talked about we talked about police. Of course, they had some wild theories about police, of course, and I told him straight up, I'm a big believer in the bad apple kind of theory. I mean, the majority of cops out here are really trying to do the best they can, guys. And if you disagree, that's fine. That's the whole point of this conversation. That's the whole point of this forum, is to be able to say what you want, and that's what I'm doing. And if you guys disagree, that's fine. I personally have had both experiences with police. I've had some very terrible ones, some that they're just not great. And then for the majority, though, I've had really good experiences with police officers. And of course, whenever you need help, I mean, there's really nobody else to call in this country, and we all will. So maybe give them a break, maybe understand that they're humans, understand that not everybody is the worst thing that we hear about. And then, of course, I told them, that I disagreed. I told them that I was a pretty big fan of not fan, but I supported law enforcement and what it is they try to do, because in a lot of society, then we're all going to be worse off, guys. Like, I mean, we may not have the best system, but there's a system in place, and that system is what protects us. So towards the end of the night, we got all the nitty gritty out of the way. I'd say we maybe even became friends. We had a little bit of bar talk, just having fun, throwing some darts, stuff like that. And then this one guy's telling me, he's there because he wanted to see the bartender. That's the only reason he was there, And he's telling me about his fears, man. This burly, hairy, AB prison guy. He's telling me about his fears of a girl. He's afraid to talk to a girl. This guy's been down for 18 years. You know, he's associated with the brand. He's done some really shady stuff, and he's afraid of a girl, man. So, you know, I just kind of reminded him at the end of the night that, you know, it's okay to just be a boy who likes a girl, and you might be afraid that you're gonna mess it up, but you don't know that that's gonna happen. So maybe let's try to just see where it goes. You know, if it messes up, then you're no worse off than you are now. But maybe it won't. You know, maybe it won't. Maybe you find the one. Anyway, so we wrapped it up. I gave these guys hugs. You know, they gave me a hug. The one guy's a good tattoo artist. I might even go see him, actually. It was an interesting experience. There was a lot of similarities as far as it goes, like with military and stuff like that. But I would like to clarify that as far as like the race stuff goes, the cop stuff goes, I pretty much disagreed with everything they said. And I told them as much. I even told the one guy, I'm not going to say any names, but I told him at one point, you know, if you want to go outside and go, we can go. That's fine. But I think that we're at a point in this conversation where I can be honest with you that I think you're wrong. And he respected my opinion. He didn't agree with it, but he respected it. Okay, so in conclusion, I would just like to say that, guys, we're all people. We all have have a history. We all have a past. A lot of us have a past that we're not proud of, and I've done stupid with zeros on the end. You know, I've done so much stuff that it's just not fair to the people that are still in my lives. It's not fair that they've given me so many second chances. So if we're all capable of a second chance, then people like this are capable of a second chance as well. You know, because it's often, you know, I think I heard it was like a George Bush comment or something that we judge others by their worst mistakes and ourselves by by our best intentions. And that's usually kind of true because mistakes, unless they're completely malicious, but for the most part in our lives, we try to approach things with good intentions, and a lot of times it goes sideways, it goes belly up, and then we get judged by the mistake, not by the intention in which we enter the entire situation. So let's give each other a break, guys. Let's remember we're all humans. Let's remember we all have issues sleeping. We all don't like getting up early. We all love I Love Lucy. Well, maybe not all of us, but we like the Golden Girls, right? Okay. So let's just all give each other a break and remember that we're just people. And so next time you have a chance to maybe enter, maybe not a situation as extreme as this, but next time you have a situation where you can learn something new about somebody that you didn't know, go ahead and take that opportunity. Learn from somebody, learn from everybody, do the best you can, guys, and just remember to just be kind. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with me. This is the longest video I've ever made, and I really appreciate it. If I get no views, that's okay, but I really appreciate it, guys. And just remember to be kind, go out there, be awesome, be okay with being you, and be okay with not being sorry for it, because it's okay that you're awesome. All right. I'm Eugene Hutton. Thank you for staying where the wild things are.